that's totally fine if you'd like to. But.
The tongues are out. Having a great time.
Jamaica!
Be interesting to see if Jamaica can duplicate some of the prowess that it had during the Olympic Games.
Absolutely.
Usain Bolt is still ubiquitous here, as are a lot of the Paralympic athletes. Athletes on the billboards. It's been really impressive just to see how visible those athletes are and how much the corporate groups have supported the Paralympics.
Japan!
Because that makes a huge difference. You see some of these images on the billboards, and it really changes some of your view of what it means about the sport. And I think it's part of the reason that they're selling so many tickets. So Japan coming through, and they have a big contingent, 165 athletes.
Japan should feature very prominently in the medals, well up the table.
They certainly do, and I remember some of the guys I competed against, some of the Japanese guys. They worked as hard, if not harder, than anybody I have ever seen. It was just absolutely amazing the amount of miles that they would put in. They're not going to be outworked, that's for sure. On the Japanese team, there'll be a lot of preparation, and we'll look to them for some great results. And it's a big team, 165 athletes.
It is.
The rising sun there. You might have been doing a little bit of a tribute to Usain Bolt there. I don't know.
Oh, right.
Looked like there was the bow and arrow going. I don't know.
Keiichi Kimura, the swimmer, is the flag bearer for Japan for London 2012.
Jordan!
Jordan coming through here. Do you like how the women carrying the Broleys are wearing the same outfits? Or the same colors.
It's just, yeah, the colors are matching the teams, aren't they?
Brings the whole team together.
Bit chilly, I think, for those dresses, but I've noticed that one of the women was wearing a denim jacket before to keep it. I don't know if she'd forgotten to take it off. But good on her.
Kazakhstan!
And those dancers have not stopped
I know,
yet, have
I'm
they?
so impressed with them.
Wow, no, those are some interesting jackets, the Kazakhstan jackets. Pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm really liking the Kazakhstan uniform. Might try and get in there and swap with them.
Kenya!
It's great.
Kenya, which often features prominently on the track in the Olympics, does so here in the Paralympics as well.
Have they got a big team?
The Kenyans have a team of 28 athletes, so it's not a huge team, no.
Just seemed like there were quite a few. No.
You see the stadium starting to fill in. 4,200 athletes. Takes a while, even though this is moving really quickly.
They are moving quickly, but
it takes a long time to get 4,200 athletes in. Interesting sign of, solidarity in some ways there. Or union with the Korean carrying the Union Jack flag. So celebrating that we are here in London. We're happy to be here. As well as a whole lot of Korean flags.
I think she just did an M for Mo Farah.
Was it for Mo Farah, really?
Well, I don't know.
It might have been. Who
Could have
knows?
been. We saw the Bolt earlier. Might have been part of the, here we are in your turf and we're looking to replicate the success.
You hope so, and that was, Mo Farah was amazing.
So many people I've spoken to since I've been here have said that was their real highlight of the London Olympics, regardless of whether you're, a GB supporter or not.
Right.
It's such a delightful win. Well, 2 wins that he had.
2 wins, the 5 and the 10K, yes. And you do see some of the traditional wear, which is, I think is one of the interesting parts of the opening ceremonies and of the games in general.
It just adds so much character, doesn't it?
It really does. And it is this idea of bringing countries together. And it changes it so much when it's a person that you know as opposed to a country that you've heard of or read about in the news.
Kyrgyzstan from Central Asia.
Lao People's Democratic Republic.
See that everybody's wearing their credentials as well, or a lot of them are wearing their credentials, which pretty much is the only thing that gets you into places. There's a tremendous amount of security here, making sure that everything's going to be safe for all the athletes, for all the spectators.
There's certainly no getting anywhere, even if you are an athlete, no getting anywhere without your accreditation around your neck.
Exactly.
You get scanned pretty much everywhere you go, getting through checkpoints and
it might take a little bit more time, but it's a whole lot better than the alternative.
Look, I know competition hasn't started yet, but I must say that
Lebanon.
Security that I've had to deal with so far has been quick, easy, and done with a smile too. Particularly the army guys, many of them obviously brought in to help out with the security, and they've just been so friendly and so lovely to deal with.
They really have. And
big grins every morning.
they're early in the morning. They're doing long hours. So many of these volunteers, the army guys, the volunteers, the drivers, the people volunteering in the village, they're working ridiculously long hours, as have all the organizers, just to put on this event. But people are happy to be here. They're here for this 2 weeks, and for the previous 2 weeks, the Olympic 2 weeks. And the thing is, it resembles a lot of what the athletes do. Where it's a lifetime of work for the hope of a moment of brilliance that you get here and hope that you can perform. And these guys have worked so hard just to get here, and they're willing to make it work. I'm sure they'll all be exhausted by the time the games finish, but they'll be exhausted with a smile on their face too. Another country that's had some recent difficulty, but it's nice to see the athletes coming and performing.
Abdulrahim Busanan is carrying the flag.
It's a team of 7 athletes.
Lithuania.
Rolandos Urbonas is the flag bearer for Lithuania.
They're a little bit more sedate than the Italians were, but those green jackets certainly aren't.
I'm liking the green jackets.
They're good, yeah. You are slightly partial to green, aren't you?
Yeah, I think I must be, tonight. No, that's right. They're kind of keeping a lid on it a bit more, aren't they?
But certainly, nonetheless, excited to be here.
Also got to remember that they've had to wait for an hour
outside
the stadium before they were allowed to walk in. So,
and you've been in line for a long time at this point.
Absolutely.
Madagascar.
Really is just an amazing number of countries that are competing. Stoke Mandeville back in '48 had 16 athletes. go from 16 to 4,200 athletes, and now 166 countries that are represented.
Yeah, it is incredible. Imagine if they could have thought back then that this is what they were starting, if you could have had a glimpse into the future to know that it would multiply by so many. And I do wonder what the Paralympics and the Olympics, for that matter, will look like in another, 20 years' time. But I guess we've probably had, when the schedules are so tight now that there's not going to be an exponential increase in the number of athletes competing. There will still be rises here and there, but the schedule is so packed, and they're often adding and taking out events to try and make it as fair as possible. But you can't just keep adding events.
You can't. No. I mean, it's only so big that the games can grow logistically. But at the same time, you are seeing more athletes, and you'll see a greater and greater depth of athletes, which I think is the big intention, to see that, to see the entertainment, to see the, to see the quality of the sport continue to grow, which I've certainly seen in the period of time. My first games were back in '92, and to see how it's progressed has been absolutely amazing, and to see it reach a variety of different places as well, where it's not just sort of your first world nations that are dominating. And they will dominate to a certain extent, but at the same time, you will see some competitive, you'll see athletes from other places that are competitive as well. But it also changes. I mean, back in Stoke, back with Sir Ludwig Gutmann, it was about health. Because guys were basically rotting in their beds. I mean, rotting and dying in their beds. And that was just unacceptable to him. And you're seeing it on a variety of different levels, where you're seeing, at that point, it was about physical health, but now you're seeing it on cultural health. You're seeing this idea of being curious and going forward and seeing something that you might not necessarily see, seeing the human spirit in some ways.
Sure.
Or seeing the best of the human spirit.
What do you think the major changes have been since your first games in 1992? So we're going back a number of years now, I guess, but is the overall, I guess, the standard of performance, I mean, do you, in that period of time, do you notice a big difference between then and now?
You see the standard of performance, you see the gap getting smaller and smaller, where there were more outliers back then. But you see that gap getting smaller and smaller. You see the celebration getting bigger. A celebration like this, my first games, the opening ceremonies were not in a stadium.
Where did they have it?
They were outside. My first games were in Albertville, and it was basically alpine skiing and cross country skiing at that point, with biathlon as well. And we had probably, I'd be guessing, but it was probably about 400 athletes versus about 4,000 athletes. And so it was a much, much smaller group. And it didn't have the same kind of feel where you were reaching the casual fan. You were reaching friends and family. That was pretty much it. Those were the people who came by, and a bunch of school children that they brought up. But one of the big things that I'm seeing is the corporate involvement now.
Yeah.
Corporate involvement on the Olympic side, for the individual countries as well. We saw a whole lot more Paralympic athletes during the commercials for the Olympics in the U.S., which was great, because that's helping push the sport forward, helping with funding, but also helping to get that message out there. Those corporations have a much bigger voice than any one of us has as an individual. Mexico always has a great team. Raced against a bunch of the Mexican guys on the road and on the track, and some of them I passed, and some of them were still there. Wow, okay, you guys are still doing it. Makes me feel younger in some ways that they're still there. I've never seen these outfits from the Mexicans. They're
colors.
Great. There we go, Jaime. There's the race against him.
He's still going.